Ennard the Amalgam is an animatronic like none other. Terrifying, curious, both uneasy on the eyes and absolutely breathtaking, in a manner of speaking. Though I can't stress enough that what Ennard is and what it is capable of is downright haunting. Oh yes, Ennard is everything FNAF might want or need, especially in its recent obsession with body-snatching and humans who are animatronics in disguise. This is what FNAF would want, right? So, why was Ennard's potential squandered? And before you think I'm talking out of my ear, I have a point later on that'll bring this whole thing up really neatly. But I can't jump into that without starting with who Ennard is, what happened to them, and where the missing potential comes in. Ennard was introduced in Sister Location as an amalgam of Circus Baby and her band, but it goes beyond that. In the actual concept of FNAF, not only was Ennard the first of his kind, and I'll refer to him as a he because I'm going to accidentally do it anyways, but he was a major threat. Baby might have been cunning alone, but she was just another machine. Ennard broke the laws of animatronics that FNAF had set up in their multiple outings. And not only was Ennard a great pretender, but he was a body snatcher. Combined together, they gutted and climbed into Michael Afton's body and used it until it decayed before fleeing into the sewer. What happened next to Ennard was downright bizarre. Ennard had a major transformation off-screen, but no, beyond off-screen, off-lore altogether. Baby was injected from Ennard and he became Molten Freddy, not in the games, not in the books, but in the source code of a website that was regularly updated and changed. Unless you were scanning the source codes of websites or watched a lot of theory videos, you could have entirely missed this. And it's not the fact that people couldn't figure out what happened, to an extent, but the weird framing of how this went about, along with the major downgrade from one of the most terrifying and cunning animatronics to a slightly different Freddy that just crawls around not doing anything. In a game where there's only 4 enemies and one of them is already a recolored Freddy, that was a bad call, as was dropping Ennard after that. And I should note something here about the difference between missed potential and dropped plot lines. The reason a character like the puppet is so notable for being dropped is because characters like William, Baby, and Michael continue to thrive in the main games or vicariously through other media. The puppet could have been written off in FNAF 3, but it wasn't. It was brought back for a twist so they could connect the games to the books. And I believe this is a missed opportunity, yes, but that's nothing to what happened to Ennard. The puppet was shafted in favor of the Aftons. Ennard was legitimately thrown out. But as you'll soon find out, they might have dropped Ennard, but they didn't drop his concepts. They just handed them over to other lesser characters. And if you heard my shift in tone just then, you already know who I'm going to be talking about. But before we get into that, let's touch on the raw potential of Ennard. As I said before, Ennard was a great pretender. He can mimic voices perfectly. He presumably has some of the skills that the Funtime animatronics had, which means he might also have their skills to kidnap children. He is tall and menacing, but shaped human enough that he can pull off a human disguise. He is an animatronic who has broken all programming, has escaped his enclosure, and now has the means and smarts to run rampant around the city. Forget William Afton. Ennard is what you should really be scared of. Because another thing I think I should note is that Ennard's MO is different from William's. William's crusade is an egotistical pleasure cruise, doing whatever he wants to support himself. It's been at times suggested that his goal is immortality, but the means he goes to achieve this, and the numerous mistakes he's made, suggests that he's going much more off of his desires than rationality. Ennard, meanwhile, seems geared towards survival. Baby and her band's initial goal was to escape and to not get caught again, and once her baggage is dumped, we can only assume that Ennard's continued goal is to survive. We're not sure how Ennard functions mentally. While it is shown that Funtime Freddy takes the reins, it is unclear if Ballora and Funtime Foxy are still 2 separate minds sharing a space with Funtime Freddy, or if they're all fused into a hive mind. There must have been some separation to decide that Baby had to go, but then they have a singular personality when they're Molten Freddy, as suggested when Molten Freddy refers to himself as Me and I. Thanks for inviting me to the party. I'll try not to disappoint. So with this in mind, we can assume that Ennard's goals are to survive under any means possible. But those goals are extremely flexible. With the right story backing it, you can realistically maneuver Ennard to do whatever you wanted and use this hunger to survive, thrive, and get ahead as a means to explain it. There's other benefits that Ennard has as well. Ennard is very much like the puppet. They both have a concrete place in the lore. They both have tight relationships with or as main characters. While the puppet is a main character, Ennard is both a creation of Afton, sometimes contains Baby, another headlining character, and has tight ties with Michael Afton. This makes Ennard a valuable character. He has obvious story connections that you can bank on, but you don't have to rely on them because they're not extremely vitally important. He has connections to the main characters, but they don't hold back his potential. Comparing him to Vanny, there's something else that Ennard has that gives him way more potential than she could ever have. And it's the fact that he is a wild card. He is Afton's creation, but he is not loyal to him. Which means you can both do the route where Ennard is acting against Afton as a separate villain, and possibly the route where he is under Afton's control, but under a tentative control where if their bond is cut, they can turn against him. Yes, you see where I'm getting at. Not to mention that as far as animatronics go, yes, Ennard is still one of the most uncanny looking ones. He doesn't look great in Help Wanted, who does, but his design can be molded into something both severely uncomfortable and hard to make sense of. In the sense that you could do so much with a bunch of wires, you just have to use the mask as a focal point. Flexible motive, cool design, sci-fi elements, but still more grounded than illusion discs, and has the capability to do some incredibly disturbing things. Ennard could be a great villain. And Fnaf agrees so too, because Eleanor is just diet Ennard with a baby shell. See, I ended up cutting a large section from my Eleanor video where I discussed this. But Eleanor is just Ennard repackaged into a less appealing and compelling body. She steals other people's bodies, kind of, but doesn't do anything scary with them. Her backstory is hard to follow, what she is hard to explain, her motives are entirely non-existent, and she pretty much breaks the boundaries of the world she's in. So why choose Eleanor, the knockoff baby, instead of Ennard? Because Fnaf keeps doing the fourth closet. No, actually, it was because they wanted to introduce Remnant. And that meant... Wait, Remnant was introduced alongside Ennard and Molten Freddy. In fact, Ennard might just be straight Remnant. Okay, full stop. Eleanor should have definitely been Ennard, and the only reason she wasn't was likely because there might have been an initial plan to work it into Security Breach? Maybe? I don't know. Is it just because they thought Baby was a more popular character? That they thought audiences wouldn't be able to identify a villain unless they looked like either a rabbit or Baby? Come to think of it, the moment Ennard stopped being an Afton, he was dropped from the plot. Gee, I wonder why. But I digress. My point isn't that Eleanor is a bad villain, and that you could have done the entire Fazbear Frights epilogue series with Ennard instead, even revealed them as the third inside of the Stitch Wrath, had an amalgam fight, and it would have led to a more interesting and less confusing conclusion. My point is that you already had a character to do this role better. Canning him was an oopsie, especially if you could have played off that Fazbear Frights took place before Pizza Simulator. In fact, if you really wanted to get coy with it, you could have had Fazbear Frights explain how Ennard became Molten Freddy. Because, the games already don't really explain it, it's only hidden in the source code. Why not have a book version of that event? And you're probably saying, well, Ennard did return, he's the Blob. As of right now, there's 5 theories of who the Blob might be, and nobody knows for sure because it doesn't do anything, ironically. It doesn't have Molten Freddy's mask or Ennard's wires. It too is kind of like a replacement for Ennard, more than a form of him. Like somebody watched Spirited Away and really liked the monster version of No Face, but they only had a little window to implement a character, so they cut out everything except the one scene with Monster No Face in the back room. And in the end, it is poor Ennard who suffered. This clown is completely out of work, You built him to be something terrifying and horrifying, then decided he wasn't kid-friendly enough to even hand out maps at the entrance. I suppose we should be lucky he made it into the Christmas card. But Ennard still lives on, divided up amongst a slew of replacement characters, none of which hold a candle to the original. There's a little of him in every body.